Welcome back to the Best Ball Boardroom. We are still in June. We are still drafting, and we got some stuff going on in the industry. We've got Tyreek Hill in more trouble. We've got Kareem Hunt being patient as he waits to see if there's any interest for him. We got Juju Smith-Schuster's ADP submarining faster than a voyage down to view the Titanic. Oof, it's rough. All right. We are excited. I got a great guest today. We are bringing on someone from not just our little corner of the internet of fantasy sports, but actually has some legit credibility coming from ESPN on-air talent. He's written for 4 for 4, Fantasy Pros. I know you've all seen him on Twitter. Let's bring on Eric Moody. How's it going?
No, it's going pretty good. I was chuckling as you were saying that because I'm thinking, I don't think there's a fantasy website out there that I have not written for. Just thinking about that, I was like, I don't think there's a place where I haven't written. But no, I appreciate that intro. Excited to be here. You know what? I was sitting there thinking, I was like, it's June. It's almost July. I feel like it's the calm before the NFL and fantasy football storm. Like, what are you thinking, Justin?
Oh, yeah. And I mean, the people here are the best ball, like the degens, the sickos, the ones who are like, oh, the Super Bowl ended. We're starting to draft. But we're starting to see the rooms populated with these drafts, with a bit more of the normies, the casuals. Mm-hmm. And then you start seeing on fantasy football, you start seeing the seasonal content kind of coming out. People are starting to get their feet wet. So I think my favorite thing about kind of this stream is it really, brings on a variety of guests to get their takes, to get kind of, some people are on the analytics side of some things. Some people are actually handing the dirt, watching the tape. And I think for you kind of have a bit of both. What would you say kind of your strength is in this space, whether it's the news? I know you've done some analytics articles in the past, all that.
Yeah, I would just say, I'm just thinking, from an analysis lens, it's I always kind of think of it as you're playing a piano. You want to play the piano with both hands. And when I think about, both hands, you're thinking, the analytics, and you're also thinking with the film work. And so I just always try to combine both of those elements together. Just when giving advice, because nothing drives me battier than the debate on Twitter and social media between those that are just diehard film junkies and those that are diehard analytic junkies. They're sitting there fighting back and forth. It's just my whole thought is, why not just play the piano with both hands, right? Just do it that way.
I feel that. Yeah, no, I think I put a tweet that today. I mean, right now there is so much noise out there and trying to figure out where there's actually signal. And as you say, better to use both hands for that because yeah, we've got, for best ball, we've got 3 years of data that we can use to actually kind of make projections around strategy aspect. There's far more data around the actual player projection side of things. Mm-hmm. Then we've got the whole actual player takes and analysis and so many rookies that we're still trying to feel where should we actually be drafting these? I mean, for you and rookies, let me see. I just jumped in so we can hop in a draft. We'll start sharing that screen as well. But let's start with rookies. What is your overall kind of approach to how you evaluate these from a fantasy perspective? How do you kind of take that?
Yeah, when I look at rookies, I just think that, you've got certain players that were drafted, very, very high. So I always look at a player that has a round 1 or round 2, kind of draft capital. And those are typically players that I believe that, NFL teams are going to try to get involved early and often. So as it relates to fantasy, I just always like to prioritize rookies who are in positions to play, sooner rather than later. And you can always target a little bit later in best ball drafts, players who could see opportunity as the season progresses if someone gets injured or if they just outright outplay someone on the depth chart. So that's what I kind of look into. But sometimes you kind of get enamored by certain players that were drafted in rounds 5 or 6 or very late in the draft. It's just if they don't have a clear path to playing time, hope is not a viable strategy, right?
Yeah, no, I feel that. And as you were going through Christian McCaffrey in the queue, just to begin with, I mean, Tyreek Hill, we've got the news coming out. Sounded like it was a fishing bonanza. What was it? Rosenhaus was actually wrestling some sharks on that fishing trip, maybe, and then something got a little heated. So maybe there's a little risk here with Tyreek Hill. I personally think, if anything, it might be a Kamara situation where they at least are able to delay it towards after this season. But any initial reactions, we won't hold you to. But just some thoughts on kind of situations when legal gets involved and someone with a bit of a history.
Yeah, it's tough because you look at this Tyreek Hill situation. It's obviously different circumstances than the Alvin Kamara situation. But I just always take into account, their history, where they're going in drafts, and at least try to project, just based on your own opinion and what you're reading out there, what could happen with these players. But as it relates to someone like Tyreek Hill, I don't think this situation will escalate, at least based on what we've heard so far. We all saw how productive he was with Tua last year in Miami. I'm like, this is someone that amassed like a ridiculous 31.6% target share, while ranking also first in yards per route run. So he's obviously someone you're going to want to target early in your draft. Just this news wouldn't necessarily sway or change my fantasy opinion on Tyreek Hill. So,
yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, we had a month or two ago, maybe a couple months ago, Tyreek came out and said, like, hey, this is his final season. And for someone who is, I want to say he's 29 right now.
Yeah, very young guy, relatively speaking.
29 years old for a wide receiver, that's kind of prime. Like, I'd say that 28 to 29 is like, hey, middle of that prime for wide receivers. And for him to come out and say, like, hey, this is his final year. Yes, he's a speed wide receiver. Like, yes, you expect as he get older, that's going to get turned down a little. But I think even more so, like, I think from this potential legal situation, his lawyer should be able to at least delay that towards after this season. If he is really going to tire, then that wouldn't impact him at all. And just seems some added motivation there to kind of push it on.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's take a look at this draft board. So mostly chalk around through the board here. Tyreek Hill still going at number 5 there, maybe falling behind Cooper Kupp. Maybe that be a little bit of the impact with what the news is. I know you've been kind of getting your feet a little wet with best ball this year. You're obviously heavily involved in the sports betting, the overall fantasy football market and such. But what's your kind of just overall thoughts and feel for this year in fantasy football?
Yeah, I would say if you're kind of looking at it at 60,000 feet, is that, I think it's a great year to prioritize, wide receiver early. What I mean by that, I'm very excited about the running backs that are available. We'll say outside of rounds 2, and I would say going through, rounds probably like 3 through 7. I think you've got a ton of viable options, that are solid like RB2s, but have the potential, to finish like as an RB1. And so I'm just thinking, looking at this best ball draft, I'm like, if someone's starting off with like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, even like Cooper Kupp, you've got Tyreek Hill there, it looks like at 5. It's that you can still turn around when you're back on the clock, and there's a lot of viable like running back options to choose from. So I would say that's one huge takeaway. And if I just think about some of the other positions like at tight end, it's really the same situation. It's like, Travis Kelce or bust. And I know a lot of folks are looking at, TJ Hawkinson and George Kittle, some of those names that we're used to seeing, at the top of the tight end hierarchy of power, so to speak. But I just think there's a lot of viable options in the later rounds and even in the early double-digit rounds at tight end that you can take a tight end by committee approach, pair 2 of those players together, and have you really have a tight end one week in and week out. I'll close on this and pass it back to you, Justin, is that one tight end that I really like late that could really exceed expectations is Pittsburgh Steelers tight end Pat Freiermuth. Just given that situation in Pittsburgh, Kenny Pickett really on the precipice of a breakout season. He's got great playmakers surrounding him. You're talking about Freiermuth, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, so you should see some favorable coverage and also favorable matchups. So he's the type of player that I would just prefer to target later if I can't get Travis Kelce like in round 1 or early round 2. So what do you think?
Yeah, no, I like Freiermuth a lot. So for me, I'm of a similar opinion where I think like there's a lot of value at the end of these drafts. And specifically for like an underdog perspective, you go to the last round and you have basically available Mike Gesicki, Hunter Henry, Tyler Conklin, Noah Fant, Luke Musgrave, Jake Ferguson, all guys that are pretty much their starting tight end. And that's literally costing you only the last round pick. Getting a few of those, or I like going, hey, my 17th and 18th, grabbing 2 of those, but then grabbing someone like a Pat Freiermuth that gives me that actual upside, because I know that I can create a solid floor with those last guys picks, the Hunter Henry or whatever. No, they're not going to finish as a top 5 tight end, but give me those 2 and then give me something like that Pat Freiermuth. Maybe it's the chick, but someone who has we're about to be back up here, but has that ability from a talent perspective, from a role in the offense, to maybe break out. All right. looking at this board right now, we grab T. Higgins because, as you said, like wide receivers, they're are very valuable. There are those late running backs. You grabbing Jalen Hurts, Josh Jacobs here? What would you choose between these two? Grabbing a high end running back, we got 10 seconds, or grabbing the elite QB?
Yeah, I was thinking to go with the elite QB because that's going to put you in a position for where, like, if you get someone like a Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, I'm like, that's going to put you in a position for where you could get by with rostering just two quarterbacks. And that's kind of the angle that I would take with that. Josh Jacobs is in a good spot, could see some regression there for this year, but just go with Jalen Hurts, and that can give you some flexibility in these upcoming rounds to not have to worry about who my QB1 is going to be. Then you can really take advantage of some of the value at wide receiver and running back in the middle rounds, where it's a ton of players in the middle rounds that I'm very, very high on heading into the 2023 season. So.
Yeah, definitely feel that. And with best ball, we love stacking. And, Jalen Hurts is a little more difficult because if you grab him naked here, you're missing out. You already had Devonta Smith go. You already had A.J. Brown go. You could potentially grab a Dallas Goedert,
Exactly.
but you're grabbing Goedert in that position where, like, there are some strong wide receivers. You may be giving up some value, maybe overspending a little compared to what we're just saying. But I'm also okay because I believe that Jalen Hurts, because of what he does on the ground, because of, hey, he can still have that week 17 in the finals of the playoffs, that strong 2 TD Russian TD game that you don't need those extras. So I'm okay with grabbing Jalen Hurts. I've also grabbed a lot of Josh Jacobs there as well. But grabbing 2 running backs in the first 3, it puts you in a little bit of a bind because it's hard to kind of, if you have running back values falling later on, to grab those when you've already invested heavily.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying there. Like if you have like an early round investment, to your point, like in running backs early, then at that situation, I'm like, you could have just fewer running backs as a whole, like on the roster, than really just add volume like at wide receiver. So you could end up with like 4, maybe 5 running backs tops, and just really try to leverage that wide receiver value. I hear where you're coming from, though.
I like that. Let's give a little shout out to chat right now. We got some Moody love going here. Moody Fire from the Rum Boys Fantasy Network, from the Fantasy Fellowship as well. And talking directly about that Hurts, Goedert definitely fits in. If we take a look at an ADP perspective right now for Goedert, he is going 73. If we take a look at the draft board and project a little ahead, we've got 70, we got 75. So it makes sense where he's going because a lot of people are like, hey, I grabbed Jalen Hurts. I want to grab Dallas Goedert for the stack. We'll see how it fits with our build. I think as long as we go heavy wide receivers with these next probably maybe 3 of these 4, a Goedert could work, and you leave yourself with a 2 QB, 2 tight end build, or grabbing 2 very late tight ends, as we kind of referenced with the Pat Frymuth earlier. We've got some options, I think.
Yeah, I think Goedert is really kind of like intriguing. You think about what he's been able to do over the last 2 seasons. Like he's averaged 56.7 yards per game, and I would say like a widely efficient, like 10.6 yards per target. Plus, he's got a great quarterback too in Jalen Hurts. So, he's someone that I'm excited about drafting this year.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, it's interesting too. Like when Goedert and Ertz are on the field together, we always got excited about Goedert. We always knew from an efficiency standpoint and routes run, like his numbers were great. Ertz leaves, and Goedert, like he hasn't been that game breaker that we were kind of hoping, but he still has been a strong tight end. He has had some injury issues that I think have kind of, hurt him a little, even when on the field, as well as from a kind of rapport and rhythm with Goedert. But this could be, if he could stay healthy this year and the team actually is going to need to throw more, because their defense definitely got worse this offseason, not being able to kind of continue to pay for the expensive players. All right, top of the board, we got 4 wide receivers. Any of these wide receivers jumping out to you? Christian Kirk, Mike Williams, Terry, or Drake?
You know what? I'm just going to go with my gut here. Like Terry McLaurin is someone that's really kind of caught my attention. I'm kind of drawn to him out of those names, like a moth to the flame. I would say. Are
you familiar with Week 17 correlation and this idea?
Yeah, you referring to for where, like in say Week 17, like if you have a stack or certain players like from like one particular team, and then on the flip side, you want to have some exposure to the team that they're playing. Is that where you're going with this?
Yep, exactly. Okay. Because in this tournament, $3 million is first place, but you've got to win that in Week 17 and beat out like 450 other teams. In fantasy, in DFS, if one team, Jalen Hurts and Dallas Goedert, go off, we probably want someone from Arizona who they play against, because if Philly needs to keep scoring, someone from Arizona as well. And turns out San Francisco and Washington play each other. So the Terry one, loved hearing you say that, because we got Christian McCaffrey, we got Terry McLaurin. Maybe we even throw in like a late Sam Howell, which would fit well from a low draft capital because we already drafted Jalen Hurts. I love how this is coming together.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, it's just when I think about McLaurin, like we all know what he's capable of, but I think his 2022 season was really like a tale of like two halves. I'm like, we know about Carson Wentz under center, like McLaurin's role was like withering like away. Like he just had a 16.3% target share. I think it was a little bit over 26% air yard share, and obviously that hurt. You know, with Taylor Heineke, you know his target share, like increased to a little bit under 30%. Same thing with air yards, you know, yards per route run. And so, like to your point about Sam Howell, I'm excited about that pairing, like with Howell and McLaurin, and really just this offense as a whole with some of the coaching changes that they've had. So I think because people are kind of looking through the rearview mirror, thinking about how Terry McLaurin started this season, I think they're really overlooking him, which makes him a value in my opinion. I don't know if you have any thoughts on McLaurin. So.
Yeah, I mean, since he's come out of Ohio State, he just came out guns blazing. And I think it's funny because we are all, I think, take locked a little bit out of college and how we kind of evaluate players from a fantasy angle and then their performance on the field. And Ohio State wide receivers, we have historically just been really bad at evaluating because the way that they play in that scheme does not translate well to the pros from a projection standpoint. But then you have what Terry did. You have what Garrett Wilson did. Like time and time again, we're seeing it's going to be JSN next. Like we have to accept that, like, okay, we know he's a superstar. The challenge has then been, who's the best quarterback that Terry has really played with?
Great point.
I don't know. Like, there's no clear answer there. And not to say that we're confident in the Q quarterback this year. Sam Howell, Jacoby Brissett, I think both cause us some level of risk. And then it's like, okay, but Jahan Dotson. I love Jahan Dotson too. What he was able to do, and like from an efficiency standpoint, he looked really good last year too. So can they support two really strong wide receivers as well as a running game that, like, we know Washington historically wants to run? I think new offensive coordinator, we're going to get a little more opportunity with Bieniemy. That I'm horrible at pronouncing that. I'm not even going to try it again. But Eric over there with the new offensive coordinator and what he can do for that offense. Hopefully Sam Howell is able to help deliver it.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about that pairing. You brought up some good points there.
All right. While we were talking, we grabbed Marquise Brown. We were talking that we kind of needed another wide receiver. It was kind of between Chris Godwin and Marquise Brown, but since we're talking about the Week 17 correlation and between those two, it's kind of a coin flip. Went with the Jalen Hurts, Marquise Brown bring back. And so that gives us a CMC Jalen Hurts, 3 wide receivers. And I think if we want to be able to take like a Goedert in one of these 70 and 75, we're at least giving ourselves that flexibility.
Yeah. No, I like Marquise Brown quite a bit going into this upcoming season. I think some people are just concerned about the quarterback situation, but at least in my opinion, you know, targets are targets. And you think back to last year, right? In those 8 games, I'm like, Marquise Brown played without Nuke Hopkins. I'm like, he was averaging nearly like 12.3 fantasy points per game. I'm just thinking half PPR in my mind, you know, with that number. But I'm like, he's going to get a massive target share. And as you mentioned, we're talking about some of this correlation. I'm like, we could see a scenario where the Cardinals are trailing quite a bit, which obviously helps Marquise Brown even more. I just think he's like a huge value right now because a lot of people are thinking Arizona Cardinals offense stinks. I don't want Marquise Brown. I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum where I'm like, I'll gladly take him where he's being drafted.
Yeah, he's going to absolutely eat. And yeah, you were talking about those first, I think, 5 or 6 games. His targets in those games were 6, 11, 17, 11, 10, 9, followed up with 3/8, even once Hopkins was back. There's no one else to throw to there. Rondale Moore is not going to command like a large target share. Greg Dortch is not going to be more than just kind of a, hey, he has that slot role. Yeah, they've got, what is it? Michael Wilson, I think, is the rookie there as well. I'm not, Marquise Brown is going to eat. And even if it is Colt McCoy, like he can still feed him the ball. The other interesting one there, if we're talking about Arizona, is James Conner. Where even James Conner, and I think those 4 games at the end of the year when you didn't have Kyler, he still finished, I think, a top 7 running back in 2 of them and a top 15 or top 16 in the other 2. From a pure volume standpoint, this may be a horribly inefficient, low-scoring team, but Marquise Brown and James Conner might just eat it all.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like Connor quite a bit. I'm like, he's another player that's being overlooked. And you brought up how he closed out the season. I think he was like the RB4, like overall in like the last 8 games. I think he averaged around like 17 fantasy points per game. But when you mentioned about volume, and I'm thinking snaps too, because he played like over 90% of his team snaps over that time frame, and so he just doesn't have any competition that's going to take snaps or volume away from him. So I'd gladly take him as like an RB2 or flex, depending on how I build my team. So just want to say that I love him quite a bit.
I like that. All right, so we can take Dallas Goedert here and just not risk him getting stolen. There's not a player here that like really jumps out above the rest, so I think it's fair. From a strategy-wise, Potato Man likely would not have taken him. He already grabbed Hawkinson. TWJ is not at the tight end, so maybe there was some risk. But we'll take the Dallas Goedert there and kind of game plan a bit more forward now. This is, in my mind, where we really start seeing this is kind of the last opportunity to get yourself one of those top end, or not top end, but like higher upside, higher expectation wide receivers before the big cliff. Are there any wide receivers here? I know you were talking about rookies and opportunity. Oh, there goes Jordan Addison. Treylon Burks from a volume-wise, maybe one of these. We can grab Jahan Dotson to set up that Washington stack as well. Any of these jump out?
Yeah, like everyone's on the Jordan Addison hype train, just playing alongside Justin Jefferson. The Vikings are very pass-heavy offense, so, there's obviously some things that are drawing fantasy managers in, but I'll use this as an opportunity to kind of talk about Treylon Burks. I know most people think, okay, the Titans, Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill, I don't know if I like that or not. But here's the reality. I'm like, Ryan Tannehill, like he's going to feed Burks like target. Kind of the stats that come to mind when I think about Burks and really the potential is that, like in his final 6 healthy games played, Burks led the Titans in targets and receiving yards. So just think about that if you extrapolate that over a full season and then compare that to where he's being drafted. I think he's a huge value that people are overlooking just because of the offense that he's a part of. So I would advise people not to do that. Definitely add Treylon Burks to your team. I think he's really well positioned for a breakout season.
Yeah, I like that. I think my thoughts around Treylon Burks, gosh, it's like weighing both because there's so heavy arguments on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely.
On one, I mean, name another wide receiver on that team. Like, even their tight end is still not running more than 50% of routes. Like, yes, there's Derrick Henry, but like there's no one else. So if Tannehill's playing, Treylon Burks might average 10 to 12 targets a game. Like, it's going to be insane. And those are decent targets from Ryan Tannehill. Now, the side of the other is, well, they might sign DeAndre Hopkins. If they sign Hopkins, that's really bad for Burke because now his volume is going to substantially go down. And if Tannehill doesn't play the entire season, if the team is not that great and like, hey, you're actually going to bring in Will Levis, I think that is a major risk for me. So I think coming out the gate, I feel really strong about Treylon Burks, assuming they don't bring in Hopkins. Like DFS, I want to play him week 1, week 2, week 3, find those matchups. I'm a little concerned about chat. Tell me here, what is the Titans win total for this year? Because I mean, like maybe we just don't see Will Levis this year. Like maybe it's Malik Willis 2.0. And like, I mean, he did fall to the 3rd round in the draft where like, or was it second? I don't know. Maybe, but obviously he's not the number 2 overall pick that was like potentially being hyped pre-draft.
I think it makes sense to just run Tannehill out there and just get Levis ready for you will say the 2024 season. One thing that I think we should consider too with Burks, just to kind of close the loop on him, is that I'm like, you've got with the Titans, you don't have like I would say Robert Woods is no longer there. Austin Hooper is no longer there. I mean, these are 2 players that did command a high number of red zone targets. So perhaps that's something that could help Burks with his fantasy value and play to his favor for where he may not have like as many targets as people would like just because of the nature of the offense, but he could make up with that with some touchdown receptions. So again, just something to consider.
Yeah, completely agree. And so here we go. 7.5 win total for the Titans.
7.5.
I mean, that at least means like, hey, you're competitive for the playoffs. Because if you look at that division, like we're not expecting, I don't know, like they obviously be able to run away with that division in the past when it's not much competition there. So I think we see a little more Tannehill than kind of I was initially thinking when we were evaluating Will Levis. That's probably a good thing for Treylon Burks. I'm on board. We'll see what happens with the Hopkins situation. Putting a bow on the James Conner. It was an Ian Hartitz tweet that I was reading from about an hour ago, where James Conner PPR fantasy football finishes in his 4 games of 22-2 with Colt McCoy, David Blau. I think it's Bluff. Help me there.
I think it's Blau.
Okay.
I believe.
David Blau, Trace McSorley. Offense never scored 20-plus points, and he finished RB5, RB12, RB4, and RB15 despite leaving early. And not scoring more than 20 points, that might be the same offense that we kind of see this year. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're coming back around.
Okay.
Let's do a quick review of this team. We went with the Jalen Hurts and Christian McCaffrey, so veered a little away from wide receiver early on to get possibly QB1 and RB1. Then we went 4 straight wide receivers, and we included a Dallas Goedert in there for the stack. Feeling pretty good about this. We've got Pacheco at the top of the queue. We've got a slew of running backs after that, a couple more wide receivers. I like Pacheco. What are your thoughts on who's available and what would you be considering?
Yeah, just considering how the how the team is structured right now, I would definitely look at the running back position. And I know you brought up Pacheco, which I think will be a really really good option. I'm like, he's going to get a ton of touches, and as a Chiefs starter, as part of that committee with Jared McKinnon. I do like the adjustments that the Chiefs made this offseason with their offensive line. And one thing about Pacheco, I won't dive too deep into the rabbit hole, but when you look at different like advanced metrics, like yards before contact, yards after contact, those types of things, it shows me that he's got really good vision. And for where he's decisive, he hits the hole. We've all seen those highlights on those runs where he's running hard out there. So he's someone that I like quite a bit, and he could be a player that can easily exceed expectations. I'm like, he played, he was fabulous during the postseason, great in the Super Bowl. So I do believe that translates over. So I would go with Pacheco here.
I like that. And any concern about Deneric Prince, undrafted free agent for Kansas City, people thinking, could this be Pacheco 2.0? There was noise during the preseason last year of Pacheco, and now there's noise for Prince too. I'm not buying it, but I'm at least keeping an eye out.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I'm not buying it, but again, just have it on your radar, as we go through the next couple of months here before week 1. So
I feel that. All right, coming back around to us. It's a little ugly with wide receivers, a lot of running backs, A.J. Dillon, Zach Charbonnet, Antonio Gibson. Anything here jump out that you really think we should maybe target? We got 15 seconds.
Yeah, I'm keeping my eye on Samaje Perine. I do like Perine quite a bit. You got Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson that's there. You could always play that scenario where you can get the player who's last man standing. Dillon, the running game in Green Bay should be pretty productive. They may lean on it more with Jordan Love there. Solid offensive line that they've got there. But definitely would want to go with the running back here just to since you're heavy on wide receiver. But I know the clock is ticking, so I'm trying to speak quickly.
No worries at all. We ended up just grabbing Zach Charbonnet. Figured if we have McCaffrey, so we are looking for kind of a strong upside number 2 there. All the names there I think are pretty strong.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I have been drafting a lot of Antonio Gibson and some Brian Robinson. We already got 2 Washington wide receivers, so I didn't want to overload too much on that Washington team. I think if you looked at the other wide receivers that were available, we kind of just skipped over them. It gets kind of ugly in this spot. So glad that we at least got 4 prior to this area. We'll load up some more because we are setting up for, as we mentioned, a 2 QB team and then either 1 more tight end or 2 very late tight ends. We got 3 bye week 14. Their bye week bros out there do not like when we stack too many of the same bye week. What's your kind of thought on this from a best ball, from a general fantasy angle?
Yeah, I try not to let bye weeks influence, too many of my decisions. If I've got a player like in a certain tier or a player projected to do certain things, I'm not going to let a bye week, kind of dictate or influence my decision too much there. So it's just kind of something you'll kind of have to deal with. It may always be that 1 week, where you're like, I'm at a significant disadvantage. But then I look at it like the other side of things. I look at it as like instead of a glass half full, or glass half empty perspective. I'm just thinking, okay, well, I may be at a disadvantage for this week, but think about all the other weeks where I'll have a significant advantage because there's more than one bye week, right?
I like that. And you know what? Larry is right. Hey, when you're the champ, you don't need to worry about buys.
Yeah.
We don't worry about them. I posted one from a couple nights ago where I think my first 7 or 8 picks were all by week 5. It led to some stress from there, but then we drafted no other buys, and we'll fight through. We're going to take a vacation during that bye week anyways, so we don't have to watch in the field. All right. Let's take a look at some of these other teams that are going on there. If there's any extremes going on, always like to take a look. So like here, KS Leg started off with 4 straight wide receivers, then went 3 straight running backs and 2 wide receivers. It does not have a QB, does not have a tight end yet. How comfortable are you how long you're willing to wait on grabbing your first quarterback?
Yeah, I would say in like a best ball format like this, I would say I'm not really that comfortable with it because I'm just thinking this person's in a scenario for where all the elite QBs are gone. They are going to have to draft, I would say, at least a minimum of 3 quarterbacks, to be able to fill that void. But then they're going to be in a position to miss out on some other opportunities like later in the draft because you were saying they're wide receiver heavy, so they need to get some other running backs too. So they'll probably end up rostering 6 to 7 running backs most likely, just considering some of the running backs they have on their roster right now. They're going to have to roster 3 quarterbacks. So I'm not that excited about it, just off the top of my head and just kind of looking at the team. But that's just my opinion on the build and just how to approach it. But I don't know.
Yeah,
what are you thinking, Justin?
My guess, I'm trying to play with their team. The nice thing about it is if you look at the players that have been drafted, they can do a lot of later stacks. So you got Matthew Stafford here. You got Derek Carr. You've got Russell Wilson. And then I think we had one more down here. You also have Jordan Love. So that gives you at least the ability to kind of go with, if I'm going 3 QBs, I'm going to go 3 stacks. He'll probably go with a 3-5-7-3 with 4-6 wide receivers already. It'll be interesting. I always like seeing these kind of more untraditional builds. But I think because he's got the ability to kind of stack those wide receivers. Go. There's the first one, Russell Wilson. Stacks with his early Denver pick as well. All right, we are back on the board here. Tyler Board hanging about a round past ADP. We have T. Higgins. May not be the worst to kind of make a bet on the Cincy offense. You also like Samaje Perine. Which of those two? You got 8 seconds. You just got to give me one. We can.
I would go with Perine.
Okay,
and I'll kind of speak to that. So let's get that pick in. And I'm trying to figure out the best way to break this down. So. I just think Javonte Williams, some people may not want to hear it, but I'm just going to say it. I just don't think his return from this serious knee injury that he had last year is going to be as smooth as possible. I know in the media he's like, yep, everything's fine. I'm on track to return. But we've all seen it before. Not every running back is athletically gifted and has had the super soldier serum like Adrian Peterson, right? And I just think it's going to be a struggle. And they brought Perine in for a reason. We saw the success that he had last year, my memory here, between weeks 11 through 13, where he was able to start. Joe Mixon was out, remember? He went gangbusters. He averaged nearly 24 fantasy points per game. And so Sean Payton, he's always used a running back by committee. So even if Javonte Williams is back, he's playing, doesn't look quite like he did, say, the beginning of last season, I think either way, Perine's going to be involved. So I think it's really a win-win scenario at his ADP when you draft him. So that's what kind of had me gravitating towards Perine.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. For me, I think everything you touched on is dead accurate, particularly around Sean Payton directly wanted to bring Samaje Perine on. And I think what we saw with Cincy is that coaches like Perine. He does the dirty stuff. He's great at blocking. He knows how to get you those yards. Like, he's not going to dance around back there. And like he's a coach's pet. Like, coaches really enjoy players like that. And we've seen that. And I think the upside case for Javonte Williams that we saw, that we were hoping for as a rookie when he came out, comes out strong that first game and such. I just don't think that exists anymore. One, with the injury, but two, because of Samaje Perine. Like, I just don't even think if he is fully healthy, with a healthy Samaje, they're willing to even trust him with that rock. So you've now got a player who has substantial health risk, even from like when he comes back. Then when he does come back, is he going to be 100%? And then there's another very legitimate player that the coaches like. So for me, there's definitely some Javonte risk. I actually think Samaje has the higher upside because, hey, Javonte, maybe it takes him a little longer and Samaje comes out really strong. Maybe he re-injured, he re-aggravates. Maybe they just really treat him with some, bubbles, with bubble wrap around it. So like, I like Samaje a lot. I'm definitely down to draft him. That entire area, I think, are players that have decent projections, and if things go right, have some strong upside. The AJ Dillon, if Aaron Jones goes down, the Gibson or Brian Robinson, either of those have direct claim to kind of having a monster role. So lots of guys in that area I like.
Yeah. Now, I was looking at this list here, and I was like, my eyes keep going to like Dalton Schultz there. He's another player that I think is being overlooked as like a late round kind of tight end. You have an opinion on Schultz, or? I don't
dislike Schultz. I don't see that much of a difference between Schultz and Hayden Hurst or Hunter Henry or some of those others.
Fair point.
I think most likely Schultz is going to score about 2 points per game more than those, which when you're doing a full season, 30 some points, like it's a decent amount. But when you're drafting 3 tight ends and you're playing best ball, like, I don't see Dalton Schultz with a rookie QB in that offense having the level of spike weeks that I'm looking for. And so I'd rather, if I'm going to spend up, go with, as you said, Pat Freiermuth. I'm willing to spend a little more on someone like who has the talent, who has like the ability to actually break into major games. I don't think we see that with Dalton Schultz. I think he's going to be the core tight end. He's going to be on the field all the time. But I think his upside games were a product of Dallas and Dak in that system than what you see with a rookie QB. But that's to say, like, I don't have any issue with him.
No, fair point. Like, I'm looking on this list too. I'm like, Adam Thielen. For some reason, I just have like a sneaky feeling that Adam Thielen is going to lead this Carolina Panthers team in targets.
I mean, if he can bring a walker on the field with him and maybe a wheelchair on the sideline to wheel him from like which side of the field they're starting on, he may.
Yeah.
But who else? Funny. It's tough. Jonathan Mingo, DJ Chark, like Terrace Marshall, LaVisca Chenault. I don't know. Poor. Yeah. Ugh. All right, we are coming back around. I think we can still. So QB, Sam Howell is really our target, what we're looking for, because we've got that Washington, that San Francisco, and Fitz from a draft capital. I think we probably aim for going with that 2 late Dallas Goedert tight ends, unless we love one. I'm a fan of Michael Gallup. I like the ADP value here. Is there any reason not to take him?
Well, I would just say the only reason that immediately comes to mind is just with with Brandon Cooks there in Dallas now. I just wonder how many targets that Michael Gallup would end up getting. Obviously CeeDee Lamb is going to be the alpha. I'm like, he could push for like 140 targets for this upcoming season. I think Brandon Cooks would end up getting over 100, but I think it's potential for Gallup to get 100 as well. I think what really makes him intriguing with you bringing his name up is that he'll be another season removed from that knee injury. And then where you've got CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks commanding a lot of defensive attention, who knows? I think Michael Gallup could find himself open early and often and really get pelted with passes by Dak Prescott. So I think I can dig it. I can dig it, Justin. I can dig it.
I feel that. And I think he's got some strong contingency upside if CeeDee or Cooks were to go down.
Exactly.
Fairly tight, concentrated target tree there. And I think there is some strong data around, hey, that year 2 after, here we go. Larry's saying it. That year 2 after the ACLs, from from what the players say, they feel completely different. Other than obviously Adrian Peterson, because just not a real human. Alien. So that, yeah. And all right, Dalton Schultz is falling. If Dalton Schultz falls, we could potentially say, like, hey, just going Goedert and Schultz. And you mentioned it. I mean, should we do that? How do you feel?
Yeah, which other tight ends are on the board? Who else is available?
You got Higbee, you got Gerald Everett, Irv Smith. I don't think anyone has the projections of the median outcome of Dalton Schultz. We got 10 seconds.
Like Schultz would be an option, or Juwan Johnson, too, with Derek Carr. We all remember kind of how he performed with Darren Waller. I'm trying to get my thoughts together. So I think they will be pretty good options. I just like Johnson because of the red zone activity. But you can't go wrong with either one of those options. I kind of have them in a similar tier. So,
yeah, I like Juwan Johnson too. Sounds like
you on the clock now? Okay, yeah.
I'm just trying to continue to think through like what's going to happen with the Taysom situation, because Taysom Hill, like, he's not a tight end, even though he's on the board as a tight end and such. That's just not his position. So like, it doesn't really concern me that like, oh, you have Taysom and you have Juwan Johnson.
Yeah.
However, there are also more and more reports we're hearing that like they're reshaping the offense a little, that Taysom is expected to be a bit more of a pass catcher. What does that look like though? Like, is that more of a utility type player that he has played? Is it actually costing Juwan Johnson routes on the field? Overall, I think I'm pretty bullish on Juwan Johnson too, not letting the kind of Taysom bother me, other than across the whole offense, everyone's going to get a few less touchdowns just because of their kind of special gadget plays.
Yeah, I know some people are kind of worried about Foster Moreau too. It just seems like they're going to have Moreau be more of like the inline, like tight end, and then have Johnson, running routes. I remember reading somewhere, I can't remember the source, but I do remember reading it, that he was watching, I think, kind of film on like Julian Edelman, kind of routes that Edelman would run, and just kind of how he, conducts himself on the field. And so I think that's interesting, because we all remember how productive Hunter Renfrow was with Derek Carr. So perhaps it's something they're trying to replicate with Juwan Johnson. So even though it seems like on the surface a very busy tight end room, Johnson's obviously the guy that you want to target, like in fantasy, whether you're doing redraft or best ball. So I'm just pretty high on him, though.
Yeah, no, I like that. Let's do a quick refresher on what we were looking at with KS Leg here. That, no QBs, no tight ends in the first 9, as Beinfeld calls it, the triple option. Goes with Russell Wilson, continues to stack him with Greg Dulcich. I like that. Yeah. Then the Jordan Love, which we talked about, gave him an opportunity with Romeo Doubs. If he wants a third one to stack, I think we were saying it was Derek Carr and Matthew Stafford. Carr should be gone. Stafford is gone too. All right, so he got 2 out of his 4. Not too bad, and I'm sure he's still going to put together one more QB there. Kendre Miller was another one that we could have considered instead of tight end. What are your thoughts on kind of the New Orleans backfield right now? 3-headed.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because we were obviously talking about Tyreek Hill earlier in the stream and about his legal situation. Obviously, Alvin Kamara's is a lot more serious, and you got litigation, all that sort of thing that's going on, and so it's kind of one of those scenarios for where I just find myself leaning more towards like Jamal Williams. They brought Jamal Williams in for a reason. We saw the success that he had last year in Detroit. I don't expect him to score that same number of touchdowns. That's not why I'm bringing him up. It's just I can just see him getting actively involved. Now, no matter what people think, Justin, it's like, I know we get enamored by rookie running backs, rookie wide receivers, but sometimes it just takes them time to get acclimated to the NFL game. And plus, I know Miller was kind of dealing with some injury things too, right? Trying to get over some injuries as well. So that could play a factor. And so I could just see a scenario for where it's more so like the Jamal Williams show instead of the Williams and Miller show, assuming that there's some kind of suspension for Alvin Kamara. But even if it's not, I just think Williams would be the running back, more involved than Miller. So it's just a tough situation to dissect, just given the circumstances.
Yeah, I feel that. And I feel like Kendre Miller, if you've got him in Dynasty, you've got to be excited. I think.
Absolutely.
Right. Next year, he's one of those players that I could see increasing the most to having like that more not workhorse, but at least like the 1A type role.
Yeah.
Which I try to kind of think of how Dynasty may impact best ball. And for me, it's all right, if I'm thinking of how that's going to look like for next year and such, could we see Saints? I think they are right now favored to win the NFC South. Them and the Falcons are pretty close. No one has too much any confidence in the Bucs or Panthers. And so because they're going to be in it, I'm not expecting a situation like we've seen with previous teams, previous years, where we're out of it. Let's let our young guys just run loose. But if something happens to the Saints, you get an injury here or there, they're not, Falcons maybe looked a lot better. Falcons run away with it. Then I could see like, hey, let's see what Kendre Miller has. Jamal Williams, a little less usage. Alvin Kamara, we already saw him fall out of favor last year as well. So like, I think there is a path there. I'm okay on him. I'm not buying ahead of ADP, but I could see some some ways where like that works out really well for him.
Yeah, no, I agree with you because it's like if you look at Kamara's contract, I'm like it's an out of his contract in 2024, so that could end up happening. And you mentioned about Kamara falling out of favor. I'm like his usage as a receiver out of the backfield like plummeted considerably the second half of last season. So yeah, all really good points. I think you and I are aligned on that. So
yeah. What do you think that was a talent wise? Do you think it was an attitude, like person wise? So I'm gonna just grab some Kenneth Gainwell here because we loved it getting it with the Jalen Hurts, get a little stack. Great number 5 running back for this team. So we'll put that in. But like with the Alvin Kamara, part of me is like, he was never meant to be a back that was going to get 20 plus touches in a game. And when they lost, when they no longer had Mark Ingram and now they were actually trying to run him a bit more through the tackles, he just wore down and he didn't have that kind of zip that he used to as the pass catcher. But then obviously there's off the field issues. So I'm really not sure. Do you have a take on like why this is or what happened?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I'll try to break it down and try to keep it tight. But I just think back from like weeks 13, through 18. I mean, Kamara never caught more than 2 passes. Target share fell. It was around 22%, dropped to around 10 to 11%. Hopefully my math is correct there. I know it's between 10 to 11%. I just think his days of being like a fantasy week winner, I think it's over, especially if those passing numbers drop off. Just considering what he did like early in his career, I think the lack of touchdowns and the lack of targets and receiving volume, I think it was heightened more when like he had poor rushing efficiency. Because I'm thinking with some of the advanced metrics like EPA, I'm like he ended the year, I think it was like his second worst rushing EPA of his career. And so those are some of the factors I think that play a part. But then it doesn't seem like he's going to be better positioned for success this year because you do bring in someone like Jamal Williams. And you've got Miller that we talked about who they drafted. And so I think a lot of his success or failure is really tied to volume. And I don't think he's going to get that even if he plays the entire season. But on top of that, where you're looking at a potential suspension that's looming, it's he's just like a risky player, to pick up. But and I think it's probably some things, too, to try to answer your question fully, Justin, that we're not really privy to, kind of being on the outside looking in, that may be going on internally between him and the Saints coaching staff, the organization as a whole. So I think they're definitely going to try to find a way to opt out or get out of his contract in 2024. But hopefully that answers your question. It's just a tough situation to try to unbundle.
Yeah, and I mean, it kind of touches on the larger market right now for what we're seeing with running backs and free agents. And I mean, used to be that like, hey, you go into your second, third contract, like awesome, you're going to make your buttloads of money then. Now, last thing you absolutely want as a running back is basically to get released, even if you were from like a yardage and such top 12 or so running back last year for Dalvin. That market is not going to be what he's hoping for. You hear rumors that he's looking for 8+, 10+ million a year. I doubt he gets anything more than 4 to 6. It's a small market. Like David Montgomery, hey, good on him. I think he got around like that 8 million, but like that was at the very beginning. He, there was a lot of actual teams that needed running backs. No one really needs a running back right now, and you've got 4 veterans out there that are all looking for jobs. Yeah,
no, you're right. It makes me think about the running back position. I think of the Metallica album, the classic master of puppets in the song Disposable Heroes. That's exactly how everyone should feel about the running back position right now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's tough. All right, we are coming back on the clock.
Okay.
Kenny Pickett is available and dropping. No need for us to do anything silly there. You got Bryce Young dropping as well.
Mm-hmm.
We did not end up with any Carolina there.
Mm-hmm.
Think it makes sense for us to kind of just lock in that Sam Howell. And yeah, if we've got McLaurin, we've got Jahan Dotson. Obviously, they can thrive with Jacoby Brissett as their QB, and that could actually work out. But really, we're hoping that Sam Howell comes out of the gate really strong, playing well, and overall makes us a strong team.
Yeah, no, I love it. And one thing that's not talked about enough, like with Sam Howell, is really like his rushing ability. I'm like, he's a runner. I'm like, he can pick up yards, generate fantasy points with his legs. Now, he's not Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson, obviously, but I think that's an aspect of his game that's not talked about enough. So,
yeah, no, he did it on the ground at UNC with his legs, and it was interesting the talent that was surrounding him from when he started his career to later on, and how he kind of adjusted. But yeah, he's got the ability to do it on the ground. We'll see. I mean, he's got more upside than any other QB that's being drafted in this area. Mm-hmm. The challenge is he could very easily get benched. Jacoby Brissett may just be a better quarterback.
Yeah, there is some risk, but definitely a lot of upside too. So,
all right, we are hitting round 17. Quick refresher: we've got our two QBs. We've got CMC, Pacheco, Zach Charbonnet, Samaje Perine, and Kenneth Gainwell for running backs. We could maybe go with one more running back. Wide receivers, we got Terry, Marquise, Jahan Dotson, Boyd, Gallup, and MVS.
Good group.
And at the very end, we've got Goedert and Schultz. We could also, if we wanted to, add a third tight end at the very end. So we've got some options. I'll look at running backs. Are there any running backs here that you like? I mean, I'm happy with Ty Chandler and Leonard Fournette. Do you have any thoughts on if Leonard Fournette actually signs somewhere?
Yeah, because I am very intrigued by Leonard Fournette. If we're looking at those options, if we're in a best ball, we're looking for upside, players that can greatly, outperform their ADP. And it's hard to ignore Leonard Fournette because we're kind of in a scenario for where he's like a plug and play. He's a veteran guy. So a team that's going to sign him, they're going to use him. I'm like, it's a plug and play. He can learn the playbook. Boom, he's ready to go. And I think that's very attractive, like in fantasy football, whether you're playing redraft or best ball, because just think of it this way. I'm like, we're about to hit training camp, preseason, and obviously he's been keeping himself, in shape. You just think about like if a team, just name any team out there you're thinking about that has a running game that has you salivating, and someone in that running back by committee gets injured, or heaven forbid, like the starter. I'm like, he's going to be a player that those teams are going to call. So just imagine, like, if for some reason Leonard Fournette is, say, if something happens to Isaiah Pacheco and he's in Kansas City now, or Philadelphia.
Joe Mixon, we don't even know if he's going to make the team. Like, he could be a salary cap cut. So.
Exactly. You get where I'm going with this. So that's what makes someone like Leonard Fournette, like, really, really attractive. Let's
play a game. If Leonard Fournette goes to Cincy, they cut Joe Mixon because he's not willing to take a kind of salary cut. They already said, like, hey, they don't need that money. Maybe there's some off-the-field Joe Mixon issues, too. Leonard Fournette goes there. The only other running backs there are what? Chris Evans and Travion. Like, where is Leonard Fournette being drafted?
Like, just in best ball?
Yeah, I'm looking at, like, other running backs on the board that might be around him. But, like, would you take him above James Conner? Would you take him in that A.J. Dillon range?
Yeah, just thinking off the top of my head, it's like, in that scenario, would you rather have Leonard Fournette or James Conner? My gut is saying I'd rather have Leonard Fournette, just given the offensive situation. I'm just thinking about if he's near the goal line, they want to punch it in. I'm like, they're going to move the ball, with Joe Burrow and those wide receivers. But if you're talking about James Conner, I'd rather have Leonard Fournette. And I'm just thinking about from kind of projections on where I have guys. So if you mentioned James Conner, I'm thinking in that range, think of guys like Dameon Pierce, Rashad White, maybe Alexander Madison, J.K. Dobbins, Miles Sanders, Pacheco, we talked about him. It's like, if you're going to lump Leonard Fournette amongst those players, then I think he's definitely worthy of being there. But depending on the landing spot, I'm like you mentioned Cincinnati, I'd be very, very open to drafting him along with some of those other names that I mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be that shocked if it's just like, hey, where Joe Mixon's being drafted right now, you just start drafting Leonard Fournette. Because the difference would be like, Joe Mixon is a little of a deflated price right now because there is risk that he doesn't stay there or something happens, or maybe gets suspended for some games. You know that Leonard Fournette is there. Yes, there might be some additional risk that they sign another one, that they use more Chris Evans or Travion. But Joe Burrow loves throwing to his running backs. And that's where Leonard Fournette really ate with Tom Brady, is he was getting those 4, 6, 8 target games. And in fantasy, we love that. That just eats up. That's just fantastic value. So it's an interesting one. And you're not drafting any other running backs this late in a draft that have the ability to kind of, with one plausible move up to a 6th rounder. All right. We're going to end the draft with either a running back or a wide receiver. We have 20 seconds. Okay. Khalil Shakir, Jalen Hyatt, Robert Woods, Josh Downs, or we can grab a tight end. We got 10 seconds.
I was thinking my gut was just saying tight end.
Okay. We got Hunter Henry, Noah Fant, Michael Mayer.
Not some of the names I was expecting.
not exciting. All right. We went with Khalil Shakir.
Go to wide receiver.
Went with Khalil Shakir. Went with upside. There's been some positive reports from Buffalo that he's gelling. And I don't know. Maybe you can work your way in. You can't get upset when you draft someone in the 18th round who might be in 3 wide sets and their QB is Josh Allen. So overall, pretty good.
No, that's a good point, because looking like over the last, I think 3 or 4 seasons, it's like the Bills with their number of 3 wide receiver sets, like ranks top 5, I believe. That's a good call. I was just hoping to see some other names at tight end there, but I guess all the good ones have been taken.
A lot of them go 16, 17. You still got some starters back there, but we got some strong tight ends with Dallas Goedert and Dalton Schultz, so no complaints there. Absolutely. This is fantastic, Eric. I appreciate you joining us. Let the people know, where can they find you? What do you have coming this summer? I don't want to mess up the Twitter. Is it just at Moody?
Oh, no. Yeah, it's at Eric N. Moody. N is my middle name, Nicholas. Eric Moody is taken, so it's at Eric N. Moody. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter. I have that handle on other social media platforms, Instagram and TikTok. So, if you're watching, you obviously like football, NFL. So, I covered the NFL, NBA, and WNBA from a fantasy and sports betting perspective over at ESPN. I'm an on-air talent as well. So, I'll appear on ESPN Bet, Daily Wager. I've appeared on This Just In. Of course, the ESPN fantasy shows. So, you'll find me all over ESPN. But I would just say, just follow me on Twitter, if you like those things. If you like, 1990s, 2000s nostalgia, I'm your guy. You like hard rock music, I'm your guy as well. So looking forward to interacting with everyone out there. And I must say, Justin, this has been fun. I'm glad you reached out. I'm glad we were able to do this. And we got to do this again sometimes, my man. We got to make it happen.
Let's do it. Well, this is fantastic. Appreciate you joining us. Can't wait to see what your best ball drafts are looking like the rest of the summer. Always following you for some fun snippets on Twitter around fantasy football. I put his Twitter in the chat as well. So go ahead, follow Eric, give him a follow over on Twitter. And everyone else, enjoy your Thursday, enjoy your weekend. We've got some great guests coming back next week. I will see you all then, and later.